Thanks, Minister. Good evening, everybody. My name is Paul O'Hara, and it's my first time at the MacGill Summer School, so I'm just a novice. I just got here last night, but very much enjoying it so far. And a big thanks to Joe for inviting myself and also the kind of Change Nation organisation to be here this week. So it's also good to be back in Donegal. My father is from Arranmore Island, just up the road from here, and I'm from Mayo, so we used to pass through Glenties several times every year on our way on our holidays, and I was always happy when I got to Glenties because it was nearly Burton Port, so you can imagine. Occasionally, though I don't recall the Highland Hotel. But anyway, it's good to be back. I guess the reason I've been invited here by Joe is on the back of Change Nation. So just to tell you a little bit about that. Change Nation was set up by a group of young people, as were described here at length. Basically, I think a group of people that had a sense of responsibility to do something about the crisis that we find ourselves in. I work at an organisation called Ashoka, which is the world's leading network of social entrepreneurs, all with solutions to all manner of social problems across education, healthcare, etc. And we have the privilege to be exposed to these solutions day in, day out. So I had the idea of bringing 50 of the world's top social innovators to Ireland to start working on a number of the challenges that we face here across education, job creation, environmental challenges, etc. So this happened in March. We brought the 50 together for a few days, and the purpose was really to try and cultivate local demand for as many of the ideas to spread across Ireland as possible. And I'll touch on a couple of them later on, and also we'll have several of those innovators, a number coming from overseas here on Friday. So please do return if you're departing and stay if you're tempted. The question that Joe poses, where is our loyalty to and respect for our state? In thinking about how best to deal with this question, I did what I usually do, which is change the question a little bit, to how do we build loyalty to and respect for our state? Because these are things that can't be taken for granted, and they're actually things that I believe are earned over time. So what I want to reflect on is a few things that I think we could do to cultivate respect for and loyalty to the state, not least Peter Mayer's thesis, which was there needed to be a sense of shared ownership and shared responsibility. So the first thing, I was in Washington, D.C. last week until Saturday, and on Saturday they celebrated the first landing on the moon, 43 years previously. And this was an audacious vision outlined by John F. Kennedy that the American people would put man safely on the moon within a 10-year time horizon. And it seemed like an outrageous thing, but they delivered it. And I think it still fuels the kind of imagination and ambition of the American people, as a good vision should. And when I think about the current government's priority is very understandably about job creation. And the related vision that the Taoiseach regularly articulates about making Ireland the best small country in the world to do business by 2016. Now, there's no question it's an ambitious vision, and if it was achieved, there would be significant economic and social benefit. But for me, it's not a vision that the majority can resonate with. You know, building a country that's the best place to do business in is probably relevant for some policymakers, for sure, maybe the business community, but probably not a huge amount of people beyond that. So, you know, we've heard regularly about this decade of centenaries that we're entering, and, you know, I think a significant landmark is 10 years from now, 2022. It's come up a number of times over the course of the last 24 hours, which was the foundation of the Free State. So 10 years from now, Ireland will be 100 years since it officially found its independence. And that 10-year time horizon gives us a great runway to do something exciting. And I think, you know, we have an opportunity to build a vision that's, that unites the people in a common purpose towards something meaningful, that that helps us, that fuels our imagination and our ambition, just like putting a man on the moon did. And so just to build on the Taoiseach's vision and just to really start a conversation, this is something I came up with on a plane a few days ago, so it's not like the ultimate vision for Ireland. But the vision that I articulate is Ireland at 100, the best place to live on earth. And I think, you know, it's actually something that I believe is achievable within this time frame. And I think it's something that the people of Ireland will be willing to unite behind once we have a shared definition of what a great country, what living is. And I read a book recently called Flourishing by an academic called Martin Seligman, and he outlined the kind of growth of well-being indices as a very an increasingly popular means of measuring a society's success. And I think we desperately need a new measurement of success beyond, you know, the typical GDP metric, which actually was a driver of a lot of the kind of dysfunctional behavior that has us in the economic mess that we're in today. You know, particularly when you think about the weak regulation on the banks that had the domino effect. You know, that weak regulation was really driven by the need to continuously grow GDP. And I certainly don't want to live in a country that measures its success based on its GDP. I want to live in a country that measures its success based on the well-being of the population. And we're getting increasingly, we're getting much better at measuring this. You know, these are subjective metrics, so it's not like GDP shouldn't be retain its prominence as a key metric, but it should certainly not be the main one. So I think, you know, in thinking about this vision, the first thing we have to do is reframe what we think of as success, and that will in turn reframe what we value and the values that we use in going about our daily business. So I just want to give just a flavour of a couple of the ideas that we're working on that I think can help with building a flourishing society. One that Joe touched on earlier, and I bring it up because it has a presence here in Donegal. It's called Roots of Empathy. And this is an idea that, well, just to say a little bit of the backstory, when I was applying for my first job in Unilever, I had to do a psychometric analysis, and on seeing the results of the psychometric analysis, the HR manager gave me a book called Emotional Intelligence, which I'd never heard of, but it's a book by Daniel Goleman, and she basically said, you need to work on it. So this was my first introduction to emotional intelligence, and I just finished business school. I'd never even heard of the term, and on reading the book, it was very significant how important it was considered amongst leaders all over the world. So that was about 10 years ago, and then a number of years later I came across this idea in Canada where this lady had figured out how to cultivate social and emotional intelligence in young people. Scientifically proven to reduce bullying, aggression, violence, and increases all the pro-social behaviours like sharing, kindness, compassion. And so we invited this lady, Mary Gordon, to Ireland a couple of years ago, and we had different demonstration classes, and now it's functioning all across Ireland, and it's actually in 29 primary schools across Donegal, including the local school here in Glenties. So we're building an empathic civilization, and our goal is to ensure that every young person in Ireland masters this key critical skill of empathy, which is at the foundation of so many of the challenges that we need to overcome. So that's just one of the examples. There'll be several more here later in the week. In terms of another critical ingredient to the achievement of a shared vision is, I believe, shared responsibility. In building Change Nation, you know, to spread 50 ideas across the country requires thousands of change makers. And just in the few days in March, we were able to recruit thousands of change makers to investigate and discover the 50 solutions that we were marketing. And many of them are now moving into pilot stage. Our aim is to get 25 of them up and running within a year. And the fact that thousands of people were willing to get involved demonstrates for me a sense of responsibility, a sense that people really want to be involved in rebuilding Ireland. I think that's why everybody is here today as well. And I think to harness that energy requires a reorganization of how we work on problems, so that we can mobilize the energy that exists across the citizen base in the country. No longer is it the government's responsibility to tackle our problems. You know, it's the responsibility of everybody, in my view. And I think that there's a very positive trend that's driving this need to be involved in rebuilding Ireland. And we see it all over the world in our work with Ashoka. And it's a quest for meaning in what people spend their day-to-day work doing. It's the quest for a sense of purpose. And the reason people want to do it is because it's very satisfying, it's challenging, it's fun. And being a change maker is a very empowering thing. And once people sample it, they'll never go back. So one of our ambitions at Ashoka is to build societies where everybody can be a change maker, and that includes everybody here. So the key to mobilizing large groups of people behind a common vision is authentic leadership. And I think what we need more than anything is authentic leadership that we can trust, that we can believe in, that we can follow, and I think that leadership needs to come right across the country. And the truth is that leadership doesn't come from the top down, it comes from the inside out. So it's up to everybody here to decide what kind of country they want. Just to reflect on an idea, when I was down in Mayo watching Michael D. Higgins' acceptance speech, very powerful acceptance speech the day the votes were the day after the votes were cast for the most recent presidential election. And during that address, he spoke about the great sense of responsibility he felt in taking the presidential pledge. And that pledge, he pledged the best of his abilities to the service and welfare of the people of Ireland. So I'll just repeat that. He pledged the best of his abilities to the welfare and service of the people of Ireland. And I was reflecting on it over a pint that evening with my brother-in-law, and I was thinking to myself, you know, I think there's probably a significant number of people in Ireland that will be willing to accept such a pledge. Maybe not exactly the same one, but a variation on it. A pledge, you know, for example, should we invite citizens to pledge to making Ireland the best place to live on earth? And I think such a pledge reframes how we think of ourselves as citizens. You know, no longer is it looking to the government saying, I've got a problem with this, I've got a problem with that. You have to think of yourself as a change maker in such a society. And I think pledging the best of your ability to the cause of Ireland is one sure way to cultivate respect and loyalty to the state. So one additional point in terms of building this vision to make Ireland the best place to live on earth, we need the best people on earth working on that. And the truth is, I think we can get it. Ireland is very uniquely placed to get it, and that's what we experienced with Change Nation in inviting 50 of the world's top social innovators here. And they all came, and those that couldn't come are coming on Friday or at a later date. But the fact that they all came, I think, is a reflection of how Ireland is perceived around the world. There's a tremendous amount of goodwill, and I think, you know, partly it's down to our very unique hospitality as a people, and I think we have to leverage that goodwill in the rebuilding of Ireland to get, you know, thinking beyond the diaspora, which is undoubtedly a tremendous resource, an underutilized resource, 70 million people beyond our 4 million people. But we actually need to think like 7 billion people. Because the solutions are beyond the diaspora, the talent is also somewhat beyond the diaspora. And if we have a vision that can be a beacon not just for Ireland but for all societies, I think we can most certainly attract the very top people in the world: business entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, thinkers, academics, media, artists, etc. So, but you know, I think for us to do that without making Ireland a test case for the rest of the world is potentially just another version of what Peter Mayer described as a moral localism. And I think that's the danger a little bit of nationalism, is that we get too focused on the local. without considering our impact on human beings beyond our borders. So just, to conclude, I guess, with a challenge to everybody. The challenge is, what are you going to do over the next year to change this nation? What are you going to do to make sure that Ireland becomes the best place to live on earth? It's a totally achievable vision. I think it needs leadership from across all sectors and leadership from within all of us here to achieve it. And, one of the biggest barriers to becoming a powerful change maker, I think, is the fear of failure. But if there was ever a time to be fearless, I think it's now. And I don't think there can be any failure in trying to make your community a better place, to be honest. So therefore, you've actually got nothing at all to fear. So that's it. Thank you very much for listening.